Okay, Wade Deidre's got a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Bill seconded it. Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Everybody dis in favor, say nay. Okay, moving on. So Sam showed up just in time. Sam?
Excellent. Yeah, I'll give just a quick summary on all this stuff. Just starting out with the balance. The current balance for the WSRF account is $693,000 in native funds plus the $61,000 in stimulus funds. And just I guess a little bit of a refresher, that was the remainder of the balance of the $200,000 that was put into the basin account with the recent stimulus. And the only stipulation with that is the remaining $61,000 has to be spent, or not spent, but approved by the May 23 board meeting. And with that, we're trying to leave the native funds intact and spend those stimulus funds first because they do have that reimbursement. So it seems as though it's not an issue as there's only 61,000. I guess I'll just go through my talking points then for the rest. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for all the work on the VIPs. I know it's been a huge lift and we're coming to the end of the period for the base review on September 13th. So looking forward to see everybody's edits on the VIP. And just a note, I guess if everybody doesn't quite get everything in, there is still a public comment period that runs from October 13th until November 15th. So any additional comments need to be given in that period right there. And now with kind of coming to the end of the VIPs with all the edits, we're starting to draft the water plan and hoping to have a draft out by next year. So that's kind of the time frame that we're looking at for that, and obviously there'll be periods to kind of come up with that. And just a couple of dates to note: the board meeting is coming up on September 15th and 16th, so next week. So feel free to listen in. I'm sure there'll be a lot of really great discussion. And we are also holding the Water Equity Task Force workshop on September 30th. So really urging anyone who's really interested to listen in and participate in that workshop. So that's about all I've got in terms of updates, but questions? Yep.
I just want to make sure I understand that this, we have 693 plus the 60,000.
Correct.
So my question is the 63,000, we can wrap that into one of our grant periods and get it spent.
I got it broke out that way. I'm just like talk about that.
Right. Steve's on the ball. Okay.
Sam, what was the outreach that you talked about in addition to the Colorado Wetlands Space Board meeting?
The Water Equity Task Force.
Water Equity Task Force. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I know Wes can jump in on this too, and a lot of people have been kind of looking around. All the basins have people kind of representing from all types of backgrounds. Just we typically really only interact with the same, I think it's 400 stakeholders on average, and obviously Colorado is a really large place compared to 400 people. So really just trying to get a lot more people involved in the process and getting a lot more people involved in water. So really just trying to have our stakeholder groups be reflective of kind of the state as a whole. So trying to bring in some different perspectives and also stakeholders that we interact with, also having them interact with these people and maybe kind of getting messages flowing both ways. So just really trying to do a lot of outreach and get a lot more people involved in water. So I think the more people that are involved and the more people that are knowledgeable about water, the better that is for all of us. So I think that's kind of the mission of this.
What crowds are you targeting? Who's they get on
Just kind of individuals from all around the state. I know there's people from the roundtables that are involved in this workshop, and a lot of people that are, you know, in education or ranching and farming, just a lot of different backgrounds that we kind of saw across the state that maybe people didn't even know the roundtables. So just did a lot of outreach in terms of that. And this public workshop is a way for, I guess, even more people to get involved, maybe the people that haven't been involved in the task force before. There's been a couple meetings already. That have online. So those are all online if you want to listen in, but if you haven't been involved, this public workshop is a way to just have everybody interact with the task force.
The date is linked.
That is on the 30th. And the link is on our website. It's going to be a sign up to event, right? So if you go on that, it'll send you to the Zoom link for the meeting.
And it's on the
It's on engagement.
Right.
Sam, I had a question on that. So for these COVID funds, you kind of set up a separate set of books, I'd say, for the basin roundtables. Is it the same theory for the state allocated fund, the funds that the state cap?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you've got a kind of a different, you've got a different accounting method to track those, and you're gonna try to use those at first, obviously.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, those funds were kind of dispersed as kind of noted in the criteria and guidelines that a portion went to the statewide account and a portion went to the split up between all the basins, but those are still kept separate in terms of the statewide account. Trying to spend those funds first as they have a expiration date. So yeah, same as how the basins work.
Last year you guys provided kind of a, I guess, a guidance amount for state funds across the roundtables for your March and September meetings. Do you anticipate doing something similar this year?
I don't know that we really anticipate doing anything different. Obviously, that'll change if there's a huge ask for those funds. And I know that we have set in place a 3-year spending plan, but
yeah,
to my knowledge, we haven't seen anything like that come down in any messaging. So I would assume unless we start messaging, no kind of spending limit or guidance.
Okay.
Go ahead, a question.
Yeah. You talked about those folks that were not your traditional stakeholders. Is your goal more to educate them or just to get input?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that, with the task force, it's been a great opportunity for people to interact, and maybe people who haven't traditionally been really interested in kind of water on the ground level are. I mean, I know we've been seeing a lot of task force members actually coming around people meetings. So I think that's been a really huge plus, and kind of having these people have a lot more interest in being able to spread those out through their avenues. But I think it's also kind of taking input. Sometimes I feel, can be a little bit too close to the subject, and kind of getting maybe a broad perspective is interesting in terms of getting more of a varied perspective on water. So I think it's probably.
I hope you're including the basics of Colorado water law that's in our constitution.
Oh,
To
so
educate them about that before you just assume their input.
no, that was one of the first things in our meeting. When we went, we tried to kind of establish a baseline knowledge for everyone.
Yeah.
And kind of give them the background of Colorado water law and how it's
Can everybody online, somebody speak up online, make sure they can hear the conversation we're having?
Hi,
It's
this is
hard
P-Ride.
to hear. It's very cold. So if
It
the
would be
speaker
helpful
could
if your speakers could move to wherever your mic is.
Okay.
So I think back row is gonna speak up.
Back row says speak up.
Be louder.
Is that right?
Or find the microphone.
Patrick is where the microphone is.
It is up there.
The microphone is right here at the camera, guys. So when you're speaking to it, speak to the podium, and then they'll hear you better.
All right, didn't mean to interrupt. What about questions from anybody on Zoom? Do we have questions there? You guys are awful quiet tonight.
Well, to be honest, it was really hard to hear all that. So maybe if people are getting closer to the mic, we have more.
Okay,
Do you want me to give just a quick recap on that?
yeah, we're gonna go ahead and give a quick, Sam's gonna go ahead and give a quick recap on that. And then if you guys have questions, you can pipe up. Go ahead, Sam.
This is this right here.
Oh, sorry, I was looking at the wrong podium. Classic.
There is a mic. Excusable mistake.
No, appreciate it. No, I was just kind of going over a couple things like some key dates upcoming that September 13th marks the end of the roundtable comment period for the Basin implementation plan, but that there is another crack at it that Basin Roundtable members can also comment during the public comment period, which starts at in October 13th and runs till November 15th. And that we have a board meeting next week on Wednesday and Thursday, and that the Water Equity Task Force workshop is taking place September 30th. So apologies if you couldn't hear the first round. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, I do have a question. This is weird. Is there a part in the process where the board votes, the roundtable BRT votes to accept the final version? I would assume there is, but I'm not sure.
On the BIP.
On the
Is that-
BIPs,
Correct, yes.
No, I think there is.
I don't think that it's explicit in the process.
Did everybody get that email with the BIP plan in it? And if you didn't, well, I guess my suggestion would be to email Megan and ask for a copy of that, because we need to look that over and comment. It is in the packet tonight also. Well, the BIP plan isn't, but no, but
The link,
the link is there.
yeah, you should have got a link that you could look at it and then comment.
Yeah.
It's also on the website.
Also on the website, it's great.
So Deidre, to answer your question, I don't know.
I don't believe explicitly. I think that, board members have been involved in the process of their own individual BIPs, and giving comments back, during these periods that we've explained. But I don't think that there's a explicit board-wide vote for the basin implementation plans.
Okay, so my suggestion is to read up on it, and if you have a comment, to comment in the comment period.
Yes, I appreciate that. And I did send out my comments to actually the whole Basin Roundtable tonight. I, for one, am really, part of the process has kind of disconnected us a little bit from hearing what our fellow roundtable members think and might be concerned about or love. And so I apologize if some of you are getting to read my comments and aren't interested in what everybody else's comments are, but for sure I am. So I hope that people might consider sharing them with the rest of us, because I think there's a great wisdom when you get all the different perspectives and knowledge that sit on this roundtable. So thanks. I'll be quiet now. I was just curious if that was part of the process. Appreciate it.
No, appreciate the question.
Okay, any other questions for Sam?
Hey there, this is Andy Rossi from the Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District. I have a question about the outreach program for new members.
We can hear you.
When
Andy.
you're at the, great, would you be able to contact us so we can at least at the Upper Yampa District provide you all with at least the information for our board meetings and any sort of programs we have going on for those who are in that task force meeting set. We want to make sure that we're reaching as many people as possible. And if you have some new constituents that are out there, we'd like them to be involved in what we have going on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're done with the budget report and the CWCB staff update.
Awesome. Thanks all.
Let's move on. Thanks, Sam. We appreciate it. Moving on to agenda number 6, the public hearings and public input and comment. I'd like to start that off. I apologize. I should have mentioned this earlier. So since we've been doing all this COVID thing or whatever, April has left us and she'll be sorely, sorely missed. She was the quiet one in the room, but when she spoke, she had a lot of power. And she'll really be missed. She was very good. On a side note there, though, I'd like to introduce Megan. She's looking at me like rolling her eyes. We're excited to have Megan. I've worked with Megan on some other projects, and she is very, very good. And I'm sure she can fill the shoes and is going to do us a very good job. So welcome aboard, Megan.
Bear with me as I muddle through everything. So,
Yeah, we are. No, I've heard good things. So, and then another member that we've lost this year is Kelly Heaney. And Kelly was another very powerful force on the board, and good luck to her because she did such an awesome job for us. If you guys see her in a water meeting or whatever, thank her for her time because Kelly was definitely an asset for the board. So those are my comments. I'll leave it off to anybody else that has any comments.
Mike?
I have a question.
Bill's got the, Bill, go ahead.
I'd just like to make sure if you were not already aware that Water Education Colorado is going to honor Kelly as a young, as an emerging water leader at their president's reception tomorrow night.
Oh, good.
So yeah, she's breaking loose.
Yes.
And she said that to take advantage of her now that she's in this position of authority, that we didn't lose her. We have her in a different position with a different capacity.
Well, let's use that to our advantage.
Thank you.
I apologize. Whoever else was on the line, was it Doug?
Yeah, that was me. I was just going to ask us as the roundtable how and what process we're going to use to or utilize to replace Kelly and the municipal rep for Routt County, whether we need to, whether that should be us or somebody else convening a caucus of those 4 municipalities so we could have a new rep appointed by them.
So the match should come up in the November elections, I believe. And do they appoint? Does anybody know?
Yeah, so the municipals do their own caucus and they make their own appointment.
Okay. So I'm going to throw that back at you, Doug. If you know someone that's really good that might be in that position, you might reach out to them.
Yeah, no, that sounds good, Mike. And I think maybe Ken and I will, we might shoot an email to the municipalities and see, let them take it upon themselves to appoint a member.
Yeah, I agree. Any other comments?
I've known Kelly, Steve, back, if you can remember back to where we used to meet in person, Kelly was our parliamentarian, timekeeper and whatever. She was voted on by this roundtable.
I remember.
So
And she's sorely missed tonight.
So if we do, if we go back to meeting in person, we probably should consider taking a recommendation, see if anybody wants to step up.
I agree. Especially
It's a thankless job.
if she did keep us in line.
Yep.
Yeah. So if anybody wants that position, think on it, and we'll, maybe when we have the next in-person deal, we can vote on it. Or the next meeting. We'll put it on the agenda. Okay, no other comments, and all right. So now we're gonna just buckle down and get back to work here. Item 7, consideration action on roundtable projects. So let's start with the White River Management Plan and the problematic biological opinion. Alita Powers and Jojo Law. You guys can come up and dazzle us.
I don't know about dazzling, we'll try. Doing a great job. Appreciate it. Well, I can get started while the IT's coming up. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. It's really nice to actually see everyone in person. I think I know everyone in the room, but just to give a little bit of background, my name is Jojo Law, and I manage all of the state's recovery programs in the state, so including the Upper Colorado Recovery Endangered Fish Recovery Program. And this is actually, just looking back in history, this is actually the 3rd time that we've given an update on the White River Management Plan and Programmatic Biological Opinion. And I actually remember it was about 3 years ago that I considered this roundtable one of the most dedicated roundtables in the state because it was the latest presentation that I've ever done. We did a presentation at, I think, about 11 p.m. at night. So I think maybe that's when Kelly became maybe the parliamentarian timekeeper,
Yes.
but one of the most dedicated roundtables, I think. In
Just so you know, we still are.
I think my next presentation after that was 5 minutes. So I'm fortunate to have a little bit more time this time. But we like to come to the roundtable every time, you know, to give updates every time that we feel like we've been made a milestone. So tonight, we're so happy to present some milestones that we've made. And we have a really great group of team working on the White River Management Plan and PBO, and some of which are on the phone and stakeholders here tonight. But tonight, I'm really happy to be joined by a couple of my fellow teammates. So Alita Powers is here. She is from ERO Consulting. She's our consultant, helping us write the management plan and get us through the NEPA process. And then on the phone, you guys also saw that we are joined by Kevin McAbee, who's the acting director of the Endangered Fish Recovery Program, and then Tom Econopoulos, who's with the Fish and Wildlife Service. So any of the hard questions, I'll be deferring to them. But I know there are a lot of initiatives happening in the White River Basin, including the initiative that Callie is joining, some of the other work for the White River Partnership. So I just want to make it clear that, you know, we don't have the greatest wording White River Management Plan. You know, you just put White River and a plan in there and it's similar to every other name. But this plan specifically is catered towards the endangered fish. And it is to serve as a basis so that the Fish and Wildlife Service can write a programmatic biological opinion for this basin. So just to take a step back, we have 2 purposes for this White River Management Plan and PBO. One is to make sure that we cover and allow depletions, both existing and future depletions in the basin to occur. So right now, as water users in the basin, if you happen to snag a federal nexus, say you have federal funding or some other federal nexus, you will have to get an environmental permit and go through Section 7 consultation. So that's for any existing projects or any future projects that you all have in the future. Under a programmatic biological opinion and the work that we are doing, we're getting that coverage for you. So when we have a PBO and we're done with that, and you do have a federal nexus or snag a Section 7 consultation, you can use the programmatic biological opinion that we are putting in place. And this helps us in a couple of ways. One, it helps us plan for the future development of the basin. And 2, it helps protect existing water users in the basin. So really great for planning in the basin, but also the other purpose is also to ensure that the endangered fish are covered as well. So in the basin, as you know, there's 2 endangered fish, the razorback sucker, which just recently got proposed to downlist from endangered to threatened, and then the Colorado pike minnow. So we've been working on that, and we have a really great team. So we're going to provide a little bit more background tonight, but please, raise your hand, ask questions if we go too fast. Just know that this is the start of a long journey. We started 3 years ago, but we've made really good progress, and we're really excited to present some of that information tonight. So thanks, Alita. That's helpful. I just want to let you know that we'll be going through one of the milestones is the group came to consensus decision on how we'd like to approach the White River Management Plan and Programmatic Biological Opinion. We don't currently have a draft. We're putting pen to paper right now, but we felt confident enough that we have decided upon and would like to let you all know what the approach would be. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. We've done a lot. So in the 3 years and even beyond that, we've done a lot of modeling. We've looked at a lot of data and we have a lot of results. So we'll go through some of the modeling and results that we've done. The other flip of the coin is because we are setting aside some development and depletions in the basin, that has to be met with some management actions that are implemented by stakeholders, the state, and the recovery program. So we'll talk about those management actions and what they look like on the ground. And then Alita will finish off with any schedules, and then we'll, of course, have you answer more questions at the end. So a phased approach. This programmatic biological opinion is actually the last in the state of Colorado to go. The White River is the last basin. They told me it would be the most straightforward and easiest, but I think it's actually been the most complicated. I think, as folks know, we have a PPO in Yampa and we have a PPO in the Colorado River in the 15-mile reach. So this was our last one. And I think I got a little bit fooled because it has become a little bit more complicated for a couple of reasons. One, there are some uncertainties in the basin. You all as a basin and as at the CWCD, we've done a really good job trying to look into the future and predict how much water is being developed in the basin. We're looking out through the technical update and the Colorado Water Plan and now your new BIP. We kind of know, right? We kind of predicted what projects are coming down the line and how much depletions that will occur, especially from now to the year 2050. It may be getting a little fuzzy out in 2050, but we've been doing a good job of trying to predict what growth might look like in the future. But there are some uncertainties in the basin. One is future water development in the basin. I think one of the projects we've talked a lot about, and Alden's been on our team, the stakeholder team, is Wolf Creek Reservoir. He does have a tentative schedule out there, but it's one thing that we've talked about, as well as other future development in the basin. We've also heard a lot of commentary from stakeholders, including the Fish and Wildlife Service, that we're just not quite sure what climate change will look like. So between now and 2050, what does that look like as we go into the future? The final, there's more uncertainties, but to summarize it from a high level, the final third uncertainty is what the management actions look like. So unlike the Yampa River Basin, where we knew that we had some buckets of reservoirs upstream. At that time, the Elkhead Reservoir enlargement was imminent, and there was already progress and contracts going for that. In this basin, we don't have any mechanisms to directly augment flow at this time. And if we were to do that, it would take a little bit more time and effort and a little bit more investigation. So we just don't have those direct mechanisms right now. So due to those three different uncertainties, we decided not to, put our eggs in one basket and just plan, we know what's going on in 2050. We're more realistic than that. We don't know fully what's happening in 2050, nor do we want to write that down right now. So we decided just to take it in chunks. So we're calling this a phased approach. And what it will do is the first phase will cover a portion of depletion. So it will cover existing depletions in the basin, and then a portion of future depletions in the basin. So I'm just going to walk you through this chart a little bit. So during phase one, and these slides will be provided afterwards, so don't feel like you have to write it all down. Phase one will be Endangered Species Act compliance will be provided for all existing projects and depletions in the basin, and then a portion of future water depletions in the basin. So 6,150 acre feet per year of new non-agricultural depletions, plus 3,500 acres of net new agricultural and cultural and habitat maintenance use. And that cultural habitat maintenance use might be a question. It's for tribal use in Utah. So just a little bit of a different definition. And this does not mean that only that amount of depletions can occur in the basin. This by no way limits the amount of depletions. If the basin or users want to go over that, this does not limit it. This is just what is included in the programmatic biological opinion, what we think we can cover as a recovery program. If we start to exceed that, we have other contingencies going into phase 2, but just want to make sure that I emphasize that this does not limit depletions in the basin. And so during that first year, recovery will look pretty similar to what we're doing right now in the basin and the recovery actions that we're currently doing. So Alita will talk a little bit more about that at the end of this presentation. So where do those numbers come from? You know, they're actually kind of specific, 6,150 and 3,500. Maybe some of you even recognize where some of those numbers come from. So the basis of those numbers come from a few different sources. The primary source is the 2019 technical update to the Colorado Water Plan. So you'll see that 6,000, some of these numbers, 6,150, if you add them up, we'll have to do a little bit of math, but come directly from some of the hotter and drier scenarios in the basin to make sure that we have coverage for all sectors. And then this 3,500 acres of new agricultural land, that was based off of some studies that this Basin Roundtable did, as well as the technical update. So we did have basis on where those numbers came from as our kind of best guess of what would happen. And we're thinking that these depletions will cover for the next about 10 years. So we can evaluate as time goes on. There's a couple of things. So above this line is phase 1, and then as you go down, phase 2 will be triggered. And there's a couple of triggers that will actually get us to phase 2. And so one of them is if and when Wolf Creek Reservoir comes online, that would trigger phase 2. Or if we get other substantial flow augmentation in the basin, that would also trigger phase 2. So phase 2 means that once we get more actions to augment flows, we can start to deplete more water for the other sectors. So I'll go into the next slide. So just to talk a little bit more about phase 1, just to drive the point home. As I mentioned before, Endangered Species Act compliance will be covered for all existing projects in the basin, but also some of this new depletions covered here. One point of emphasis as well is that phase 1 will not provide Endangered Species Act compliance for the proposed Wolf Creek Reservoir. This is something that was we heard quite clearly from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that they would be the ones to kind of let folks know that. So that's one of the things that we heard quite clearly from them. So after we get to phase 1, there's a couple of there's a checkpoint that we then enter. So the checkpoint can be triggered by a couple of things. 1, 10 years have elapsed. So we know after 10 years we need to reevaluate where are we, how are we doing all those depletions, where are we at, what does it look like? So that's 1, 10 years have elapsed. Another thing that can get us down to phase 2 is if we've exhausted all of those depletions identified here. So that would automatically get us to the next line. And then, as I mentioned before, if there's other significant mechanisms to augment flow to the river, that could also propel us into phase 2. I think I'll go on to the next slide. So let's talk a little bit about phase 2. So this is kind of below that line you saw on the last slide, and there's actually 2 options where phase 2 might be taking us. So as I mentioned before, we can get into phase 2 if all of our phase 1 depletions are exhausted. We kind of take a look at it, and if no, then we kind of take a look at the PBO and say, how much more time do we have that we think that the depletions will be exhausted? If we have depleted all of the phase 1 depletions, then we will then reconsult with the service and reopen the PBO and amend it and reevaluate what that looks like. On the left-hand side, if we reinitiate the PBO for phase 2, what that looks like is, I mentioned, everything from phase 1, the existing depletions plus the new depletions carries over. So you'll still get coverage for your projects even if we're going to phase 2. But we also have mapped out until the year 2050 what phase 2 depletions will look like. So, and of course that has to be matched with these management actions. implemented by the recovery program. So let me talk a little bit about the 2050 depletions a little bit more in the next slide, please. So as you can see here, these are the numbers that might look familiar to you from the 2019 technical update. If you can't see this very well, I'll just summarize it. This is phase one with the phase one depletions of 6,150 acre feet per year of non-agricultural plus the 3,500 acres of agricultural. So we're also predicting that the total depletions in 2050 will add another about 10,000 acre feet. So it'll go up to 16,650 acre feet per year of non-agricultural depletions plus 3,500 acres of net new agriculture. So we've also mapped out what 2050, after phase, we also mapped out what phase two will look like as well. So with that, I think I'll pass it on to Lita to talk a little bit more about what the modeling and data have showed us so far.
I might pause there. Are there any questions about the phased approach?
So any questions for JoJo?
I have one quickly. So, and maybe you'll cover it, but so during phase one then, without any reservoir, you can call, if there's, I assume we're still trying to have enough water in the river for the fish. Where's that water going to come from?
So we, based off of the modeling, and this is a great segue.
So maybe it's coming later.
Yeah,
but
just to preface that and kind of introduce that for Alita. Right now, our current activities and the current conditions and what we've modeled for phase one looks pretty similar to what the river looks like right now, with a couple of really important exceptions. And we are not expected as a recovery program to replace one-to-one depletion. So for every drop that we as a basin in the state take out, we're not expected to put in that same amount of water because we have other actions. So we have non-native fish management, we have education and outreach and habitat. So that has been deemed, and we're predicting that the PBO for this round will be the same. That has been deemed as sufficient to kind of offset those depletions, if you will. But does that make sense? And I'm sure Alita can do a better job of describing when she goes through the modeling and the data.
okay, yeah, we'll see where we go.
Yeah, check back in if
You mentioned that this agreement does not cover Wolf Creek residents, but they would still have to comply with all the endangered species requirements. Is that what you meant by that?
Exactly. And a couple of reasons, and maybe I should pass this off to the service because this is really outside of the state's jurisdiction. So Tom Econopoly, if I don't answer this correctly, feel free to chime in. But basically the reason is because they have to do their own individual Section 7 consultation. They'll have to do their own permitting. So what I mean about that is that we're not covering their needs plans or their permitting for them underneath this programmatic biological opinion. They're going to have to do their own permitting.
So does getting this agreement done help them in any way move forward with that project?
Define helping them move forward with that
Well,
project.
we're often told that this is a very important piece of the puzzle, that it does make it easier to move forward through this agreement. And so I was surprised to hear you say they won't cover it.
Yeah, I don't know if Alden's on the line, if he'd like to add anything and the value to that, but yeah, I'll stop there to see if Alden is on the line. Is he on the line?
He shouldn't be.
I wonder why Mike is.
You miss him, huh?
I can say anything.
From talking to Alden about it, this does help, but we still have to go through our own phase 7. So it's going to be maybe sharing data and using data, depending on how it goes moving forward. But the more of these we can get done and show the need, the better it is. But we still have our own.
Still got to go through this.
Yeah, there's no avoiding it, and we can't use theirs.
Thanks, Tim, that's helpful. And I will say Alden has been such a valuable partner in this, and we have looked at different capacities of Wolf Creek Reservoir through our modeling. So it's all tied in, especially with the data analysis, but that is something we heard clearly from the service on that's the requirement.
And because there is not a bucket to draw on for augmentation, the service isn't comfortable going all the way to phase 2. So it does tie in to some of the reasons why we're having a phased approach and the comfort level of the Fish and Wildlife Service with the level of depletions that are proposed.
So
And
we-
I
we've
noticed
been-
there's some hands.
Oh, I forgot online, but we've been really fortunate with the service to have someone really engage in this process to help us understand what requirements are required by the service. So it's been really helpful to have the service there to, they've given us some comfort level with the phase approach and, if it makes sense, it doesn't make sense. So it's been helpful. Or one of those hands, Tom or Kevin?
No, it looks like we have T. Wright, Vermilion Ranch.
Yes, Jojo, could you go back one slide and could you expand a little bit on what we're seeing there with the tribes and how that's going to work?
Sure, absolutely. So similar to Colorado, Utah and the Ute tribe has also mapped out this, and all of these water depletions are dedicated to the Ute tribe. They're going through their own water process, similar, what I consider similar to the water plan, where they are planning for their future water use. So these numbers come directly from their input on how much water they think that they'll need to be covered under both phase 1 and phase 2. So T-Right, you might have a little bit more specific questions, but their sector depletions are similar to Colorado, where they have a municipal and an industrial up to 150 acre feet per year, but they also have that 200 acres of cultural and habitat maintenance. So that's for their tribal uses, those kind of confidential sacred uses for their, and then they also have the energy development similar to Colorado for oil, gas, and shell as well. T-Rex, did you have specific questions on that, or did that help answer your question?
No, that was very helpful. I just needed to understand where those were coming from and that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this is Doug Monger. I have a question too, Jojo. So when you talk about modeling the depletions, you have to start off with some baseline to do the modeling. My question is that White River has, my understanding, been notorious in the amount of conditional water rights on them. Some of them might be developed and some might not. So the depletion numbers that are being modeled, how do you account for the conditional water rights that are out there, especially for energy development, as you talked about?
Great question, Doug. And I think Alita will also expand upon this a little bit more, but to quickly answer your question, you all have been doing the work for us already. So you all may be familiar with the Wilson Water Group's modeling. We took, all the good work that you have already been done, and we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So it's the same model, disaggregated into daily data. We use state mod, and state mod has the water right component where it has not only the senior, junior, but I think it has the conditional water rights as well. So those baseline numbers should have it in there as well, Doug.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yep. We have Andy Rossi.
Yeah, thank you. I have a similar question to Doug's there. And my question is about the baseline modeling on the White River for state mod. You're talking about phasing here, and I was wondering what vintage of the state mod model are you using for the baseline? And similar to our discussion earlier in this group, has the White River Basin signed off or accepted the latest, most recent state mod modeling of the White River state mod model configuration? Thanks.
I can answer the first question. So the historic data for the period October 1st, 74 through September 30th, 2015 is the data used for the simulations. And I know that Wilson Water Group did some additional modeling with expanded set of data, and it showed that that period of time was representative of everything that was in the historic record.
Yeah, so what Alita's talking about, the gap between 2015 to 2021, they looked at that data, of course, and said that the historical baseline was reflected. But I don't know the answer to whether or not it's been approved by this roundtable. I know an iteration has been approved, which we've used because it's all the same model, but I don't know when the last time this roundtable had approved that model.
Yeah, it's probably 2018.
Jackie.
Hello. The question was, when was the last time the state model was updated? Was that your question?
Yes, well, yes, approved by this roundtable.
I think, well, we don't approve state models, but I would say the last time that we accepted the modeling results was probably during the technical update, which would have included White River.
So pretty close.
Does that make sense?
Thanks.
Yeah, I think kind of ballpark 2018, is that what we're thinking?
Yeah.
Our final reports were April 24th of 2018, so.
I think we had a presentation, sorry, I can't hear great. I think we had a presentation right before COVID to the roundtable in person of the technical update. So if that helps, it probably was right around that time, maybe November, January 2019, somewhere in there, or March.
Works for me.
That's helpful. So pretty close, we're using the same model. So, but thanks for flagging that. I think that was Andy, because we'll be sure to include that in our report because Lisa will know. So any other hands, and then we'll go on, in the interest of time, we'll go on to.
What other models are out there?
Yeah, that's the only one.
So it's a moot point.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the only other hand is Deirdre.
So I have a question. Yeah, thank you. I think, Doug raised a really important gorilla in the room, which is the amount of conditional rights that the energy companies have that haven't used on the White River, which I think dwarf that of agricultural land. But my question is, so that is really would be interesting to know, which we don't because we don't have a crystal ball. But with regard to the agriculture, because I've seen this in the BIP and I raised this as a concern, and I have the same concern here. Maybe I'm not reading it right, but it looks like you're in your study, you're assuming a certain number of additional agricultural lands in the future. It seems to me that the whole state of Colorado has less than we are predicting for the lower White River. And I believe that lower White River number came from a study that was enlisted by the Rio Blanco Water Conservancy District in order to get the conditional water rights. So I'm not sure where that number came from, Jojo, and I'm just wondering, it's the earlier slide, but you can see Colorado as a whole state is being predicted to have additional up to 2,800 acres of new irrigated ag. And if you go back a slide, it looks like the lower White is potentially likely to have 3,500. So I'm trying to understand where those, houses
Deidre,
are those. Yes.
that was identified by the state. We didn't request that study. That was provided by them and was just put into the results of our gathering information.
So the state came up with 3,500, which is a lot of new ag land for.
It's not just a.
So the 3,500 represents 2,800 in Colorado and an additional 500 in Utah.
Plus the cultural habitat. But
Okay, so
Deirdre,
it's not, it's for the whole state.
Exactly.
Is that
This,
what I'm-
yeah, this last row adds up all these numbers above it in the column. But it's a really, Deirdre, I think you have a really important question there, so I want to just point out a couple of things. I think it's a really important question. One, in our PBO, we know that water uses are fluid, right? And we don't always have the best crystal ball on, we will use exactly this water for this use. So in our PBO, we are not constrained to these specific uses. The uses can kind of move around. However, we also understand and want to protect that, we don't want all the uses to just go to energy as well. So even though we do have flexibility to move this water around a little bit more, we'll be tracking if one sector is using more of the water, we'll be tracking that and reevaluating that over the PBO as well. But I think, Deirdre, to answer your question, because I'm not getting to that, where did the acreage number comes from? Because I know in some studies and in the technical update, there's actually some scenarios that show a decrease in irrigated ag in the White River Basin. And I want to make it clear that we wanted to provide for all beneficial uses, so in every sector, so there was no way we were going to have a negative number or zero for agriculture. So we wanted to protect agriculture and put a number in there. So that 2,800 acres represents our best guess of kind of that equity with that sector, with the other sectors as well. So another point that, you notice that everything else is in acre feet per year, but the ag is in irrigated acres. We did that for a couple of reasons. One, it's easier to actually see the acres on the ground versus to know how much consumptive use it uses. But also two, because the consumptive use or acre foot per year associated with that ag cannot be translated to these other uses. So we'll be tracking that solely through the acreage, if that makes sense. But it's a good question, Deirdre. I know that doesn't fully answer your question, but it's some good commentary on the irrigated ag. So in the interest of time, because I don't know, Kelly's not here, we don't have the timekeeper. Alita, we'll go on with the modeling and results.
Okay, there are no more hands up. So some of this we already covered. Wilson Water Group used state mod as the baseline using historic data. And again, the model used legally divertible rights to estimate the baseline analysis, the baseline model, which is different from the historic gauge data. So we also have that data for comparison and to some degree as a check against the model, but the model doesn't take into account what people actually do at their diversion point. So it's imperfect. It is different from what we've seen historically in the gauge data. So someone mentioned, maybe Tim mentioned, that we converted that model into a couple of different outputs so that we could use, compare it with the information that's important for the fish. So the fish live in the river on a daily basis. They depend on particular flows during particular times of year. So these depletions were modeled on a daily time step and then monthly output so that we could compare it in all different ways. And all of the outputs were for the White River at its mouth, which we use as synonymous with the Watson gauge. So then I have a couple of charts to show you here. One is an output that compares two different data sets. One is the kind of grayish tannish color is the future depletions without climate. Both of these are without climate change, and JoJo will talk about climate change later. And then the blue is the baseline representing the current depletions, also without any climate change. That's current baseline model. So what this shows us is there's not a lot of variability. You can compare the bars, you can compare the bands and the variance in the data and see that they're pretty tight. So we're not seeing really huge differences between the simulated baseline and the depletions for this phase 1 analysis. Which is good because we don't have, like we said, we don't have buckets to send downstream to help supplement flows if at any time of the year those baseline flows are not sufficient for the fish. The next slide is just a comparison with the interim flow recommendations that were developed. And I think you have seen those interim flow recommendations. They came from the service. This is just an example. This is just part of it that represents the base flow, irrigation season base flow. There's also a similar chart that is for the spring peak flows. And then there's also a chart with flow recommendations for the non-irrigation season. So there's 3 distinct time periods that are important to consider as we're looking at depletions when that water is used. Obviously, agriculture uses have a different seasonal time step than municipal uses, which are year-round and have different fluctuations. So this chart shows that we analyzed 5 different year types in the model that corresponds to those interim flow recommendations. Because we recognize in nature that the fish persist and exist with a whole variety of hydrologic conditions. They persist when it's high water, they persist when it's dry. So we didn't want to set, or the service didn't set blanket requirements, but they scaled them based on what type of year it was. I'll just look at the first row. We have these exceedance numbers on that top row at 50%. This is simulating in the baseline how many days the target flows were not met in any given period. And then the blue band shows what happens with the depletions analysis. So the important thing to consider as we're looking at impacts from depletions is what's the delta? What's the change between what we see in the baseline and what we see with future depletions? So if you compare, I have a bird. If you compare this, yeah, you're not tall enough. If you see under this wet year type, the first column with data in it, it says the average number of days period flow target not met is 15. And then 2 cells down under the future depletion simulation, there's an additional 4 days during that period where depletions would contribute to those flow simulations not being met. So this is just a little snapshot of the output that we're looking at when we're considering what the impacts for the fish will be, how it might change, how they move, how they're able to get along with their life cycle. So I think that's all that I have for the hydrology overview. Any questions?
We have questions in the room? Bill?
I just wondered why in the different scenarios, the timeframes are 2 weeks different. Like you have August 15th to October 31st, and then August 1st to October 31st.
That's because we're looking at the irrigation season. And
why
we're
is the irrigation, you're saying the irrigation season is going to be shorter during the wet?
Right. We're assuming that the irrigation season is shorter during the wet years than the dry years, so,
And then longer as it gets drier.
right. I mean, you've got runoff longer and, yeah, so.
That just to me doesn't make a lot of sense. So, not on the length. When you're looking at August as the wet years start, they start irrigating in May.
Mm-hmm.
through October. We don't know whether it's gonna be a wet or a dry year when they start.
Right, right. And I don't have the additional context for how the interim flow recommendations were developed and why we used kind of those different periods, other than it varies based on the water year.
The only thing, and I'll open it up to Tom Economou, who was actually there. This was developed a little bit before my time, but the only other thing I'll add is it's also what we were seeing in the model too. So it was informed a little bit by some of those recommendations, but Tom Economou, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Did you have anything to add to that, or is this something we should take home and take to the stakeholder group and discuss a little bit more?
This is Tom. I don't know how to raise up my hand right yet, so, but I'll go ahead and take this. Is that there's two reasons why we chose these time periods as we did. Is because you start seeing the influence of the base flow later in the time period in a wet year. So meaning like in a wet year, you have a very, a good spring flow that takes a long time to settle into a base flow on the hydrograph. And so we noticed that it followed a pattern that was different from the wet year all the way down to the dry year. And it was very similar to what was done in the PBO for the Green River. So we chose the same time period for a similar time period, and it was, I think, exactly the same as was done for the green, just for consistency between the two flow recommendations. Did that answer the question?
We're gonna follow up.
Honestly, and I'm just thinking out loud here, it looks to me like what you're doing is you're basing a wet year or a dry year based on snowpack and when that river settles down from a high run.
Yep.
What you're
You
calling.
can look at it that way.
Well, we look at it more as a wet years when we get some summer rains as well. But if it's just snowpack and when the river stabilizes, you're probably going to rains.
Yeah, the wet year we consider, we look at the total volume for a year, which I think in this case, the year is from March through February. And we look at the volume for that year, the flow volume for that year. And then we split it up into 5 different parts from wet to dry. So, the wettest, what is it, 5% we consider as a wet year. And when we go to the 5% of the lowest flow volumes, those are dry years, then we did the similar things for the moderately wet, average, and moderately dry years. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you and I are saying the same thing. It's really
Yeah, I think we are. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, moving on. We've got 3 hands up now. Let's start with Andy Rossi.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question similar to the discussion you were just having. I would suggest that it might be helpful to add a third analysis here, and that is the historical data compared to the baseline and the depletions. Because I do believe that the baseline model is informative because it's a conservative metric of what could happen, but because it assumes not only perfect adherence to the prior appropriation system, but it also assumes instantaneous adherence to the prior appropriation system for river administration. It might be instructive for the basin inhabitants to see what the potential differences are between their historical practices and what the predictive practices would be. So I would suggest you guys add a third row there, which includes the historical data. Thank you.
And we do have that data that's in the interim flow recommendations. So that's a good idea. Okay, I have Brian Hodge.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe I missed something here in the last couple of minutes. One of the things that struck me was how similar the box and whisker plots looked between the baseline simulation and the future depletion simulation. So I was curious, given the similarity, looking at those, why? Yeah, exactly. Right. So there's really no statistically significant difference, and if anything, I'm seeing there's no difference. So I guess I'm curious why, going back to the next table, one slide further, why the numbers they're showing up as gray for me are consistently higher than the numbers in green.
Maybe you want me to take a stab at that?
Sure.
Right. Thank you, Brian. I'm understanding your question correctly. A couple of reasons. Future depletions do represent a depletion, right? So an increase in depletion. So it's not, it is taking water out of the stream. So hence, looking at the delta in the chart from, Alita's example, if you go to the next page, 15 to 19, increasing it by 4 days, it does represent a depletion. But I think the reason why the difference between the box and whisker plot and then the baseline and current future depletions is because of the timing. So what Lisa with Wilson Water Group did is she did consider the use of the water and match the timing a little bit with that. So you are seeing kind of a difference in timing, if that makes sense, and use. I don't know if that answers your question or if I misunderstood your question. Or if someone wants to take a stab at answering his question.
Kevin has his hand up.
Kevin, yeah, what do you have to say?
Thanks, Jojo. I was actually wanting to add on to what Tom Econopoli was describing. So I'll let y'all finish with this question, and then I kind of want to circle back to the different time periods for the year types.
Well, and Jojo, I think that one of the reasons they look pretty similar is that if you look at the accumulated shortage, at the delta between the accumulated shortages, it's only 1,000 acre feet during that whole simulations period. So it's really not enough to show in a plot of that scale.
That's a good point too. Brian, did you have follow-up commentary to that?
And then I assume, I'm sorry to add on, but this is also the entire simulation period. So it's not representing any, like, if we looked at the dry instead of the entire simulation period, it might look a little different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because there's a little more variation there.
Evan, Brian, did that help you out there? Hopefully.
Yeah, I think I got an answer to my question. I think the scale aspect of that helps shed some light on that. Thanks.
Let's let Kevin go ahead and do just a quick wrap up, and then we're 45 minutes into your guys' deal.
We're almost done, I promise. It's the questions.
Okay. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, just to remind folks, these are flow recommendations for fish. And so when you look at those dates of applicability, really what Tom Econopoli is describing is correct. As we get larger volumes and bigger snowpacks and different year types, what's happening is the fish are responding to that differently, right? So they are having shorter time periods to grow in the winter before winter onset at the end of October. They're spawning later because these base flows are coming in later. And so, a lot of this, I know it says irrigation season base flows, but a lot of this is based on the life history of the fish and what they're going to be doing throughout the summer and the base flows they need based on those targets. So just wanted to add that to Tom's take.
Yeah, thanks for that comment. That helps.
So we'll go quickly from here on since we're short on time, but I just want to reassure you that this is just the introduction. All of these materials will be available for review when we put pen to paper, and you'll have lots of time to put in those comments. But this is one of the reasons why I love this roundtable, because you guys get into it and you get in the weeds and you know, and so it's really great to have this engagement. I'll talk quickly about climate change modeling and our approach. This is one thing that we heard from several stakeholders and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that it was important to evaluate in this management plan and for the programmatic biological opinion. I will say my history and my background is in permitting, and I am very proud of the work that we've done. We've done such a comprehensive review of climate change using the most scientific approach to it that I am in full confidence that this is a really robust approach. And one of the things that we recognize is that there are people's entire jobs dedicated to climate change, right? So we don't need to kind of reinvent the wheel or start over a completely model from scratch. And there's a lot of Colorado initiatives looking at climate change too. So one of the first things that we did is Alita, give the credit to Alita, her team did a comprehensive climate change review, literature review to see what was out there. Based off of that, the best and easiest and most comprehensive modeling that's out there that we decided to kind of tag team onto was the Colorado Water Availability Study, which the CWCB helped commission and help develop. And then also the information from the 2019 technical update as well. So based off of that, we use that data and that was already out there, right? And these are very robust models, right? 112 traces of model predictions from here to 2050. More than decades worth of modeling. So we just decided to, tie our right into that. And we put on top of their climate modeling already are the depletions that you saw in phase 1 and phase 2. We also decided that wasn't enough because our group is amazing. And we also did another climate change analysis, and we also used the Colorado River Simulation System, which is a US Bureau of Reclamation model. And so we did a double check and the results are pretty similar. So you'll see that coming out as well, and the results for the modeling as well. We're still working on that. The other thing that we have to take a look at is downstream effects, both for NEPA compliance and for the programmatic biological opinion. So we have to look at impacts downstream of the White River in the Green River. And the way that we did that is we developed a simple spreadsheet model. Again, we're not here to reinvent the wheel, but to build upon the decades of work that other people have done. And so the state of Utah had already developed a model that they called White River Management Plan and Green River Modeling, which you might have heard it called GRUOT. So what we did is we built upon GRUOT, put our depletions on top of there, kind of did a simple spreadsheet analysis and modeling to see what the impacts were. We have a couple of preliminary modeling results, which I think is on the next page. So we analyzed two effects on base flows and effects on peak flows, and analyzed a 14-day annual maximum. So out of the 31 years modeled of GRUOT, which is about 217 months, there was only 1 month that resulted in one additional shortage. So we had, 15 months of shortage, and that just increases 16 months of shortage. So smaller impacts on the Green River because, of course, more flow. And then a very, very slight, maybe might even be Tom Economically might kill me, but maybe even an inconsequential decrease of peak flows, a 14-day annual flow of 0.2%. So we're seeing when evaluating those effects in downstream of the Green River as well. And Alita, if you want to quickly talk through management actions and schedule, and then that's our last slide.
Okay, so again, this PBO will consult on water uses and depletions and is also concerned with the recovery of the listed fish. So all of these management actions are focused on how to benefit the fish to support their recovery with the depletions in place. So there are all these different categories of management actions in the recovery program. So we're building on those activities building on what's already being done with these 5, and additionally the education outreach and program management. So what we've done is assembled teams of experts for each of those different categories. So for flow augmentation, we had a group of specialists, some with the service, some with CWCB, different states with different experts, and they had work groups. They got together, they submitted what we called spec sheets that gathered all of the information together in a consistent way so we can compare the different actions, kind of apples to apples. So we had action descriptions, the objectives and stressors, location, opportunities, challenges, all of these questions that we consolidated into spec sheets so that we could do some more analysis. After the workshops, we developed a set of screening criteria so that we could evaluate the benefit of each of those different actions and consider their rank, essentially. So how well they aligned with the recovery goals for the fish, the time frame it might take to implement, how urgent it was to respond to whatever stressor the management action was addressing, how the action addressed depletions, cost, of course, how the actions might work together. Some of them might be best work together, build on each other, build on other actions that are already occurring. And then how long the action will last, the relative permanence. So each of those helped us develop a ranking system for all of the management actions.
And just to give you an example, these are not projects that you are not familiar with. So some of the spec sheets included Wolf Creek Reservoir, Lake Avery expansion, the White River Water Initiative, White River Partnership. So we thought we captured almost everything that we could think of in the basin that could be helpful. Thanks for
And I'm not really sure what happened here. I don't know where those lines came from. Somebody was annotating, so that's okay. Okay, so that's all I have about how the management actions were developed. So now we're taking lots of data, lots of spreadsheets, looking at the results of the hydrology modeling, looking at what management actions make the most sense, give us the best bang for our buck, and respond best to recovering the fish in the basin. So, any questions on that before I dive into the schedule?
Just dive into it.
Hey, Alita, this is Kevin.
Yeah.
Could you go back one slide? I just kind of want to use this slide about the White River management actions to talk about the question that was raised earlier about how this plan could be of any help to Wolf Creek Reservoir. I think the development of all of these management actions and getting these management actions planned and maybe investigated, maybe some of them in action, that is going to improve the status of the fish in the White River. And that means that when a big project comes along, like Wolf Creek or something else, we don't have to start all of that from scratch at that time. And we don't have another 5 years of, fish that haven't been managed for. So as we improve the condition for these species in the river, and as we begin to plan and implement more actions, then it's going to be easier to build a project of that size and scope, rather than, hey, we're going to propose this large project, and then the service comes along and says, well, here are all the big things we need to do in this basin to get something like that done. Now we've already started that, at least the conversations and the investigations and kind of the feasibility and things. So I think that's one major step towards that question of how does this plan benefit projects that are even maybe not covered by the plan.
That's really good addition. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, so this has been a little bit of an iterative process. So the schedule has slipped a little bit from perhaps the last time we presented this to you. I think it was in January. So the important lines to look at are the ones with red. We have public outreach. This is when there'll be documents ready for you all to review as well as the public. And we're looking at winter 2021. We're hoping to present the draft management plan to you at the January meeting. So we'll have public outreach, and the public will have an opportunity to comment on and review the draft management plan at that time as well. The next opportunity for public outreach is when the draft environmental assessment is done. So once we finish the management plan and the biological assessment, the signing of the cooperative agreement technically triggers NEPA. It won't be a final cooperative agreement, so there'll be NEPA will technically start a little bit earlier than that, but hopefully by next summer, we will have the draft environmental assessment, and that will also be available for public review and for y'all to review as well.
But we'll take it sooner if you get it done.
We're working on it. Yeah.
Another thing that will help us be more efficient at our time is if you could provide this to us in time to post your PowerPoint as part of our packet materials on our website. And then we can be a little more interactive instead of just sort of sitting there.
That's a really good point. Yeah, we can plan on that for the next meeting for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
I promise, Mike, this wasn't payback for making us go at 11 o'clock at night. It was a really good conversation. Thank you, everyone.
Jackie and Kelly would have much.
I'll cut us off, but if there's any more questions, please, I put our emails on the next slide, but feel free to email us. We'll include this at least in the packet for Megan, and so feel free to email or call if you have more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. A lot of work. A lot of work. You guys did a good job. Okay, moving on. So we're gonna go to the Maybell Ditch update. We're gonna look at Luke and Jennifer Wellman. We'll let you guys get organized. And,
Nice to see everybody in person.
Yes.
I'm Jennifer Wellman with the Nature Conservancy. I'm the project manager for the Maybell Diversion Project, and we're here this evening with Luke Gingrich, who's our project engineer from JUV Engineers, to just provide a status update on the 30% design for the Maybell Diversion Restoration and Headgate Modernization Project. Maybe next slide, but just to refresh your memory, the project's goals primarily are to assist Maybell Irrigation District in modernizing their headgates so they can remotely operate them during times of low flows and high flows, and strategically manage their water and improve that management. We're also hoping that the project will allow the water users to better manage their water down ditch and ultimately improve the ecology in the vicinity of the diversion and improve fish passage, make it more accessible to recreationists and be a safety factor for boat passage as well. We have a number of project partners. First, Maybell Irrigation District has been amazing to work with. And JUB and River Restoration are our project engineering team. Friends of the Yampa has been instrumental in the recreational representation on our team, providing input on boat passage and what's that called for you?
Portage.
Portage, thank you. And then, of course, the Basin Roundtable, American Whitewater, Colorado Water Conservation Board, and Moffett County, among other entities, have been really helpful with supporting this project. And think I covered that already, so I will pass this to Luke to talk about the existing conditions and the 30% design review that we're in right now.
Awesome. Jennifer, thank you very much. Everybody, it's good to see everyone. This is actually the first time I've been to the Yampa-White-Green Roundtable meeting, so I'm excited to be here. So I've got a couple slides here that show existing conditions. This first one that's on your left there, this is an aerial view from Little Juniper Mountain. This was late spring this year, so flows are decent, but not high by any means. And you can really see the structure that's been created over the generations at the top end of this large riffle, and then the ditch there on the right-hand side. If folks haven't been out to that, it's pretty neat. As it progresses downstream, that ditch is supported on, it's a significant portion of hand-stacked rock. It's very impressive construction project from back in the day. These are the gates that are currently used to operate inflows to the ditch. I mean, obviously they're relatively hard to operate. You know, they're not automated by any means. It's a two-man operation at times. To shut those gates, you can see on this day, both the gates were wide open. And at times that's required by the irrigators. At times it would be handy to be able to close those down a little bit for ditch operations and for some of the non-consumptive uses in this reach. Here's what the diversion looks like. This was further into the summer this year. Lower flows, you can see obviously boater passage is probably significantly restricted this time of year in this reach. Here's another aerial view from earlier in the spring. From the other end, you can just see the same thing. We've got there's a nice backwater behind it. Okay. Okay. And again, here's another aerial view of the existing conditions. I threw this one in here because I thought this was a neat view from overhead. And what this really does is it shows the project expands.
1 second. Somebody needs to mute their mic.
There we go. Got it. Okay. So you can see project extents here in the existing conditions. We'll be taking this project from the uppermost grade control structure that's on the right hand of the screen all the way down to where in one option we'll go 700 feet down from that, and it's about 400 feet down. I'll zip through here. So this is in our 30% plans. This is what we call alternative 1. And this is a series. This is a large grade control structure followed by 9 submerged weirs. And we're using 9 different submerged weirs to dissipate the energy associated with this diversion, because the diversion is at the top end of this riffle pool or this rapid. And so there's a significant amount of energy that needs to be dealt with. We're dealing with it over these 9 submerged weirs. The main reason we're using submerged weirs is that energy drop, we're submerging the majority of that energy drop in certain flow regimes that allows for very easy boat passage. Well, one can imagine it's easier boat passage than the existing condition. There'll still be a little bit of a rapid there. And then for fish passage, migration upstream, this provides a significant area of appropriate fish passage. Alternative 2 is a roughened rock ramp. And what this does is we're still dissipating that energy, but we're doing it over 3 structures downstream of the main grade control structure. This causes for, it's a significantly higher drop, but we can use significantly less material to accomplish this. You'll notice, I don't know if folks can see my cursor or not, but in this option, we end up using, we're likely to need to use a boulder fish ladder. We don't know this for sure, but at certain flows, when we model our final design, we are anticipating there may be some difficulty in getting certain species upstream. So we've incorporated a fish ladder in this alternative. With alternative 1, we're relatively confident. Again, we need to model all of this with our final considerations. And we'll model that again in alternative one, but I don't anticipate that we'll need to use that special fish ladder. We also have 2 headgate alternatives. This one is likely to end up being our preferred. It's going to be likely slightly more expensive, a little bit simpler to operate, where we're angling the head gates, we're piping a certain extent of that. Another thing that's not in the alternative analysis, because we did an alternatives analysis kind of separately for our SCADA and automation. We've already iterated down to a communications plan and a communications network that will be installed along the ditch, and that will allow the Maybell Irrigation District to view their the data online. So they can get onto a website basically with their phone, and they can see, here's how much flow is entering the ditch. Do we want to make a gate change? Do we not want to make a gate change? Do we want to schedule a gate change? What's the river flow look like, et cetera. This is alternative B. This is just a much simpler headgate configuration. We're basically keeping the same configuration, and we put a debris boom in front of it. The debris boom, I think, has already been eliminated by the ag stakeholders in one of the meetings. That didn't last very long. Again, thanks everybody for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to talk. I want to point out that if Basin Roundtable members or others would like to be included in our 30% stakeholder outreach, please email me. That'll give folks, we'll have a little bit more time in a meeting we're planning on having at the end of this month for people to give comment, ask questions, et cetera. So that's my email address, lgingrich@jeb.com. Shoot me an email and I'll get you on the list and make sure you're contacted for that meeting. That's it.
Wow, thanks.
Yeah.
So as a Maybell irrigation representative, I'm very happy with the team that Jennifer and Luke has put together. They've listened to us. They've made sure that we have been very involved in this, and it's working well for us. So yeah, very happy with the way things go. Are you gonna get a road going down there? No, we're gonna helicopter it.
No, we moved away from that. We're actually.
There is, potential road on the south side that will be improved for construction access. So this was our 2019, I think, allocation from the Basin Roundtable and CWCB. Both water plan grant funds and WSRF funds were used and are continuing to be used for supporting the final design. And just wanted to express our gratitude to the Basin Roundtable for supporting this project. We have other phases that we can talk through another time when we go to construction, and certainly for final design, because we have separate funding. But this is a report just on that 2019 allocation of $148,000. Any questions?
Jennifer, how are you doing on your overall funding of the project as a whole? Because I believe the overall project was over 2 million. Is that true?
That's correct. And yeah, we are looking at some new revised numbers based on the designs and based on current kind of construction standards and what all is going to be included. So, I can tell you that we're seeking additional support for this project. It is not going to be $2 million. It's likely upwards of 3 or 4 potentially. So we'll have to address that when the time comes. Right now, we're in just the 30% design, so we're about a third of the way there. I think we have additional time to meet with the water users where they actually select what is best for their operation. And we've had a lot of interest, and we're certainly going after additional funds this winter to support that. We have some Yampa River Fund dollars and hopefully some other future funding through CWCB and others that we'll be seeking support for. Do you want to contribute? Is that?
It's kind of a pocket full of money you're in.
All right, talk to me after.
Yeah.
Pass the hat around over that.
I think Jeff has that.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm going to show my naivety here. On your picture with 9 check structures there, did I did I see that they're below the diversion instead of above the diversion?
They are, yeah. So what we're planning, the concept right now is.
Well, see, I told you.
Well, the diversion is
Give me the
here.
kindergarten.
Yes, yes. So flow is coming down what would be right to left. And so what we're gonna do is, we're calling this a boulder grade control structure. So we're really gonna harden this. It's basically in the existing formation that is already there. But we're gonna harden and basically tighten this top grade control structure. But what we have to do is maintain that pool elevation behind here that the Maybell irrigation users have created over the last 100 years. We have to maintain that pool elevation so we can utilize the ditch and continue to push, the water right down that ditch. But what we end up with is a significant amount of energy dissipation from point A to point B. I think you've got like 15 feet of energy difference to deal with. And the concept, what we're trying to do in both these concepts.
Elevation.
Yeah, there's steps. And you can see in the photos, you can see how much energy we're losing from, we're basically slack water condition here, and then it really speeds up. And the concern is dealing with high flows and having a structure that we can maintain when there's 25,000 CFS coming down this river. I know I can, if there's 300 feet in the river, I can put 129 in the ditch. That's not hard. It's having a structure that can do that and still be there when 25,000 comes down the river. So what we're really trying to do is consistently dissipate this energy going down in a way that will hold and maintain and continue to be accessible for recreational use and for fish passage in the future.
In times of high water, does it inundate the ditch system?
My understanding is yes, historically it does.
There are times when it overbanks, but this elevation is quite higher than the actual channel, so
That's
there's,
the 15 feet difference.
there is, roughly that. And then 15 feet, he's talking about the drop through here.
Yeah,
But this, I don't know, that could be,
it's gotta be close.
It's significant. And so
that's where the hand place rock is and its historic significance.
in our final design, what I would anticipate is there's really a significant hardening of this infrastructure in this area.
So this is clearly very targeted at rafters. So my question is, are you going to the tourism board for that group?
That'd be a Jennifer question, but
I think that that's a great idea, unless we're talking about it, something about from Seaport. Is it
Yeah.
Moffett County specific?
What?
Is it Moffett County specific?
State.
The state tourism board. Given the recreational interest in this area and the increase in both just passage on this part of the river, I think that's a good idea. I love it.
and I think we want to point out too that the main use of this structure is for irrigation diversion. It will continue to be for irrigation diversion, but
Looks like a lot of the cost there is based on.
a significant amount is. I think one of the things we are doing is utilizing some of the infrastructure that we would be putting in there anyway, and we're modifying it slightly. I think from an engineering perspective, we have to deal with all of that energy somehow. And we are configuring it such that that energy gets dealt with in a way that's as fish friendly and boater friendly as it can possibly be.
And this is actually kind of a model for the multi-benefits. You have agriculture, you have safe recreation passage and good fish passage as well. And so they're all three being trying to address all three at the same time. So this is right in all of our documents, is saying that this is what we want to try to prioritize for funding.
And you just chose the biggest one right away.
It is the critical
So
habitat
you're-
reach as well for the endangered fish, so we have to adhere to those federal standards.
I was just curious, is there a flume in the very upper diversion part?
There is. Let me see it. Okay, you can see it in this picture.
Yeah, this
No, there, that's on the ditch. I'm saying, you had those weirs, I'm sorry, the submerged weirs.
Oh, yeah.
And that's, the submerged weirs are primarily in there to help dissipate the energy, but also allow fish passage upstream.
Correct.
This didn't see it.
So those will replace all the boulders that are in the creek now that are tough to raft over, is that it?
Yeah, what we'll do is, yes, you're correct. It'll replace a lot of those. We're planning on basically artificially placing some of those back when we have kind of our hardened infrastructure built. We've also got a cost in there for, I actually forget, we call them flow diversity boulders. And what we'll do with those is that's resting areas for fish. And they'll look random, but we'll actually place them, specifically a certain distance from the other ones, and certain ones, close to the weirs. We break that flow, after it crests. So we'll have some of this kind of chaotic look to it as well in between those sections of submerged weirs.
Any questions from the?
Oh, yeah.
Andy Rossi looks up.
Yeah, Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer.
Sure.
First of all, I want to applaud you all for tackling this project from the Upper Yampa District's perspective. Taking care of the infrastructure we have is critically important. So I really applaud you guys for taking on sort of this tough challenge here. My question comes to when you guys get to your final design, and it looks like you're probably leaning towards a full SCADA installation there, which we at Upper Yampa are trying to deploy to our ditches, Stillwater Ditch, and other facilities that we have. Have you considered that because public funds would be involved in making this project happen, that the display of the diversion would then need to be available to anybody who wanted to see it? So a public display of the diversion, so anyone who wants to log into the website and see what's going on at the Maybell Ditch. That's my question. Thanks.
It's a good question. We have talked about that with some of the ag stakeholders, and likely we aren't going to make the real-time data available, although Division 6 will have access to the diversion records and the data. And so that will be available. We've made, at one point we were contemplating a video feed, and we made a lot of jokes that it would be funny to watch boats go through this on the video feed. But I think we'll probably struggle with our radio link to send consistent real-time video. So that's off the table. But no, I don't anticipate that the data will be publicly available in real time. It'll be available to the Maybell Irrigation District and their ditch rider for management purposes. But
they have the responsibility to report to.
Yes. Yeah. And then, the responsibility lies with them to report that out where they see fit. And if the ditch company decided that they wanted to make it public, that would be their purview. I don't think they will though.
We'll just hire Kent to run down through there in a boat.
You want to see it, you got floated.
We'll put a little ticker up there that says what the diversion rate is. Current flow is.
Today.
It's on public property, so somebody can get in there and look if they need to on foot. But yeah, I don't know that we're going to do anything
Yeah,
else.
that issue hasn't come up in any of our funding, but it is something we can flag. Thanks, Andy. That's a good one.
Will's got a
question. Will, you got a
Yeah, it'd
question?
be easy to do.
Yeah, I got a question. I mean, it's going to be a pretty significant project. Has there been any talk about installing a gauge station across the entire river at this point? There's a lot of capabilities with sonar devices and whatnot that could be incorporated into the SCADA system. I don't know what the price tag would be on that, but it might be beneficial just seeing what river flows are kind of hard to predict right now.
Yeah, it hasn't, a specific river gauge hasn't been contemplated. And one of the reasons it hasn't been contemplated is that the Yampa River gauge of Maybell is just downstream. And we feel like the reach from this diversion it's a relatively short reach, so the data we're getting from the USGS data is probably pretty consistent with what we're seeing at the diversion.
Does that answer your question, Will?
Yeah, I'm a little bit embarrassed that I forgot that the gauge station is right down there at the bridge.
That's all right. Is there any other questions out there on the Zoom? Okay, thanks, everybody.
Yeah, and for the month, we have a stakeholder meeting. If you'd like to be a part of those, some of you may already be on our list because you've expressed an interest in the past, but let us know if you'd like to attend that meeting. It'll be a more in-depth design review.
Yep, give me the email by the 29th at 4:45.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Good job. Thanks, guys. Let's go to Steve on the allocation of the 22 grant funds, and then he's also going to wrap up the AE grant committee also. So Steve, looks like you got 25 minutes. Can we stand you that long?
I got how many minutes?
25 minutes?
Oh,
I thought it was only 10.
yeah.
20 plus 15.
I can do 10,
Perfect.
hopefully.
I like you already. Okay, give us a minute to get him squared away and then he can get started.
Ready to go? Okay, I can work with that. So just a summary of last year's grant program. I thought I'd throw it up for everybody. The top line here is our beginning balances. We had the White River Integrated Water Initiative project that got approved by CWCB back in March. Took $49,800 of our funds, $66,000 out of the statewide account for $115,800. That project is ongoing. Sheriff's Reservoir rehabilitation, and we approved that, or that got approved in July by CWCB. That was $73,750. Originally, we thought that was going to come out of our basin account, but that's going to come out of these COVID extra funds, and that's what Sam was showing us earlier. So it's kind of like another set of books over here a little bit. So that came out of, instead of out of our basin account, that came out of these COVID extra funds, as well as the Seed Craig Water Park got approved in July as well for $65,000. So if you take those two out of the 200,000, you come up with the number that Sam gave us earlier, which was 61,000. Yeah. So in September here, in about 3 weeks, Jennifer's got another project, the Maydale Headgate that's going to be at the September CWCB meeting, and that's got 34,000 of basin account funds and 66,000 of state funds with it. So assuming that gets approved, then we would be down to $27,250 remaining of the extra COVID funds. And we would still have $693,490, which is, I think, within $1 of what Sam gave us earlier. So those are the two numbers. I added those together and said, so to be available for our 2022 grant program, total all in for our basin, we've got $720,740, more or less. So that's just kind of a rundown of where we've been and kind of where we're going. And then you can't really see those, but these, Callie's working on that one already. The funds have been approved. I think they're still waiting on POs for these, and this one's not approved yet, but hopefully by the end of the month it will be.
So the grant meeting notes from our grant meeting should be on the website, and I know they're included in the meeting package, so read those. It's only about a page long. We really only had about one thing that we needed to talk to. So the 2022 grant amount was obviously the focus of that. Previously, we've split our Basin Roundtable accounts. We were told by the state there's to not expect funding for 3 years. So last year we took our total amount, split it into thirds and said, well, let's do a third in 21, a third in 22, and a third in 23. We had a lot of Basin Roundtable members comment on that. We had quite the discussion, although it took a different direction this year with this severe drought being prevalent in most of western Colorado and the potential of the additional COVID funds that must be approved and by 23 and spent by 2025. It seemed appropriate that we allocate more funds for our 22 program. So a review of the balances and Sam included the basin, included the balances for each of the roundtables in our meeting notes. We have the highest balance of all of the roundtables currently, 693,000. The average balance of the other 8 roundtables is 436,750. If you add up all the money that's the other 8 roundtables have, divide by 8. That's the average amount, which is about $284,000 less than our current balance. So when we met on August 17th, we talked about that. We talked about with the severe drought that if there's projects to be done, the sooner we do them, the better off we'll be as a basin. So the recommendation that came out of the committee was to allocate up to $500,000. So, and the word up to is there, each of these projects is going to have to stand on its own. But we would allocate up to $500,000 of the $720,740 that's estimated to be in our roundtable account in October after the September meeting when the Maybell ditch hopefully gets approved to the 2022 grant program. And each project submitted will be evaluated on its own merits, and the amount that's not spent of the $500,000 during the course of the year would just potentially roll over into 2023 projects. So to make it short and sweet, I move that we allocate up to $500,000 for the 2022 grant program.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to allocate $500,000 into the grant program for 2022. Any discussion?
Have you received applications coming close to that amount already?
I don't believe we've received anything, right, Megan? I haven't seen anything. Megan hasn't seen anything.
This is just bookkeeping, make sure it's ready.
Yeah, so our grant program, our first grant program, so we have like 3 mini in our grant program for 2022. There's our first deadline is September 22nd or 23rd they would notify us, our Basin Roundtable, that they want to get into that they want to propose a grant to us. Our first grant committee meeting would be in October, and potentially the Basin Roundtable will see that in November.
Are we still at the different levels of grant applications for the majors?
So the only thing that we've changed, Tim, is so we got rid of all of the big grants, small grants,
okay,
Basin Roundtable grants. So we just have one grant program. What we do have is a split. If there's 10, if your grant is under 10,000, then you just fill out our 3-page grant. And present that to the committee. And if that all looks good and we forward it to the full basin roundtable meeting in November, they would have to have the WSRF application filled out before that November meeting so that everybody could see, what's the water right, who were the sources, they got letter of recommendations, all of that. So we still kind of have that small user interface, but almost everything that we see is larger than that. And everything that's been smaller, I've kind of pointed them at the Upper Yampa program, to be honest.
Okay, that was the only question I had. Good.
Kelly?
So I liked what I heard you say as far as because of the drought issues and so forth, we need, let's make use of that. So I'm just thinking, is there any way that we can kind of put some emphasis on if it's something that's going to actually improve, make wet water? I don't know what else to say, but improve. I guess maybe whether it be, I don't know if infrastructure is the right word, but something that will really help on the ground. I don't know, anything that really helps in the way of drought stuff, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, we kind of, yeah,
But you gotta have applications for it, I guess.
we got to have applications and we got to have ideas. So right now, the only people I've talked to that have that, in my belief, we have an intention of that maybe trying to get something for the September 22nd deadline is the pocket is looking at some studies that they'd like to do, but I don't think it's actually on the ground.
That's what I was looking for, is that word, on the ground.
On the ground.
What are we looking at for allocations from the state for next year? Are they gonna cut back on basin money? Are they gonna bump it? Are they gonna stay the same? What are we looking at for future money?
Yeah, anybody on that back row?
That's not sharing news, unfortunately. So what we're seeing is severance tax still being challenged and not expecting in future projections for the next 3 years or potentially beyond to get any money into that pot. So it's not what we will add or not, it's just the function of severance tax still is declining. So this infusion is all tied to stimulus dollars. In the out years, we're not seeing any new funds coming in, which is kind of would have been the case this year at the stimulus funding.
Yeah. Is it sports betting supposed to go to the Colorado Water Plan? Will you see any of that money?
Yes and no, good point. So that money is slated to come through in the next fiscal year, so starting July of next year. But that all is slated to go to water plan, so it doesn't actually go to WSRF. So some of the calculus I think you guys have in any future is to think about what you fund out of the basin and what you want to send through water plan grant, because that bucket traditionally has had more money than the roundtable side. The caveat I will note, and this has just come up in some of our water plan discussions, is that one neat thing about WSRF funds is you can fund the aging infrastructure type projects, whereas out of water plan grants, there's not really, at least currently, a mechanism for doing that. So it may kind of change how you prioritize what you fund out of. But I'll just throw that out there for thought.
Okay, perfect.
Question, Kelly?
I'm gonna have to mull that over and talk to you afterwards.
Sure. I just have a comment. I'm just of the opinion that if we get good grant proposals, that should be the priority by which we fund things. And not arbitrarily limit us to say, well, we need to save 300,000, 500,000, 700,000. I think the merits of the projects should be what they're funded. And so that's, I think the larger amount being available is appropriate.
And it is first come, first served.
So we have a motion on the table. Is the discussion over?
Anyone online?
Will's got it.
Will? Oh, I think you just took it off.
I said it was a leftover.
It's been on perpetually, I guess. Sorry.
That's all right. The motion on the table is to move that we put $500,000 or allocate $500,000 for the 2022 grant program. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. I'm assuming that was enough hands. Motion passes.
Okay, so the only other, I just want to take one more minute. I met with the PEPO group, which I'm a part of, today, and we talked about one of the things that you see on our website is we have a page for grants and we have a page for projects, but we don't have anywhere that if I wanted to go find what's going on with the leafy spurge project and where they're at, we have no place that we're keeping that data, like those 6-month reports and whatever. So Patrick and I are gonna try to pull something together this fall or winter and try to get another section on one of those pages, or maybe just another page that would, because we have about 20 some projects that are ongoing right now. And I'm having trouble keeping up with where everything's at and which projects are active and which are closed. So we're going to try to pull all that together and have access. So if you're sitting there and you're wondering about, gosh, where's the Maybell ditch? Are they done with design or whatever? You might be able to go to that folder and find the latest 6-month report. So that's something that we don't have today as a Basin Roundtable group, that I'd like us to be able to have more of that information at our fingertips.
Good idea.
So
Hey,
that's all I got. I take my 10 minutes. Oh,
This is Deirdre. I really think what you just suggested is so important. And the leafy spurge example, along with the Maybell ditch, are two great examples of things that we hope the public will be interested in. I know I've been interested to know what's happening with the leafy spurge for the White River. And I think it's a terrific idea, Steve. Thank you.
okay. That's all I got.
15 minutes, good job.
15? Darn. I know.
Okay. So moving on, I'm gonna put my glasses on so I can see here. Let's go on to the PEPO. 8A, Patrick, you're up. We've got one action item, 2 action items, the committee chair appointment and a budget.
So I'll give a quick PEPO update and then I'm going to turn over to Ken. You know, hopefully you guys been seeing the print ads and then hearing the radio ads that have been running. Basically working on what we did with the BIP update, using that as the plan to get that out there, what we're doing on the roundtable. And then really just a quick call to action for any partners, anybody that has something coming up water related, send it to me. I can put it on our Facebook page. I can use, Megan and I can use MailChimp to send it out to our notification list so that we can know what's going on in the white and the Yampa and the green, so that, you know, you get that information of what's going on out there as far as, you know, education and outreach. I just had something that went away. You didn't talk about Water 22?
Sure. You're interested in expanding our Facebook coverage. So any organizations that would like to have Patrick's information, or you want to contribute, cross pollinate, we
can let us do that, get out there more, get more information social media wise, get to the younger group, guys. Like, all us old ranchers that still want to see something in paper is not the way of the future, seems like sometimes. We might get back there, who knows, I doubt it. But anyway, Craig, coming up, Yampa-Tika is having a bunch of fifth graders, October 13th, I think it is. They'll correct me. I'll look at their notes coming out. We'll put a call out there once I get more information about it. They're having all the fifth grade classes go down to Lottie Simpson Park. They need speakers and help to teach a certain lessons. Be like 30 minutes and be doing the same thing 6 times. I know that doesn't sound fun, but it's a great opportunity for us roundtable members, or you roundtable members, I'm not a member, you roundtable members to get out there and do some education and outreach. So that's coming up. So they're asking for help.
When is that?
October 13th.
October
I think
13th.
it's a Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday.
There's also a presentation at the high school that's geared towards more science. So if you're an engineer, you want to talk chemistry, some, a more technical presentation for water. The Yampa gals are looking for some help.
And the Yampa gals are doing really good job for youth education. We need to give them a hands out to they're reaching out to all the schools. They're getting classes set up in all 3 school districts. They may still need some help in Rangeley. Reaching out there to get some, some of their education down there, but they are getting out there and providing water education. Ken.
You probably saw I stuck in a 1-page report. Al asked me to try to do something more like what Steve said, that everything he's going to tell you, you've already read. It's already been in the packet. So I tried to put in at least a short summary. We did have all the various PEPO basin representatives at the Colorado Water Congress. And Rustin, was there anything important that you want to highlight from that discussion that you want to take this opportunity to? I mean, it's like we get a couple of new staff people that are assisting you.
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly what you're going to cover, but it sounds like you're going to hit on water 22 as well.
Please, you to go to do that as well.
Okay, I think a few of the things is maybe one thing is we've heard loud and clear, and I said this to Ken, and Kelly was a great advocate, and we know like this kind of constant call to see if we can fund PEPO more. That's something that we continue to discuss, and we just don't have additional funding sources at the state, and for all the things that have come through infusion, those come through grant funds, but not directly more for us or broadening CWCB budget per se. So if we're thinking about that, it's not necessarily how the plan, but we definitely hear that it's on the forefront of the minds. Part of what we're trying to do and leverage some funds that I think will augment what you're doing, and perhaps provide some opportunities with some of the things that Vika was thinking about, is recognizing that next year we're kind of, I think this is something hopefully we'll have a bigger launch maybe in January timeframe, hopefully with some governor support behind it. But Vika has kind of collaborated with us at CWCB to re-envision, for those that remember the Water 2012 effort. That was a really great effort at the time. Then Governor Hickenlooper declared it the year of water. There's a lot of education and outreach, really honing in on trying to kind of really build up in each basin. At least in my perception, there was a whole bunch of support network. If you want to have a speaker, you could do that. There's things done with kids, or an array of outreach and education efforts that really added to and built on what PEPO was doing. So we're kind of thinking about re-envisioning that for next year for several reasons. One, it's the year we're launching the draft water plan update. It's also the 100-year anniversary of the Colorado River Compact. In addition to being like Water 2012 was the 75th anniversary of CWCB, River District, Northern, multiple anniversaries. This would be those anniversaries 10 years on, so many 85th year anniversaries as well. But we're really trying to celebrate that. And with that, I know WECO has, through various funding buckets, either signed up to kind of do things in each basin specifically, or partner with PEPO people to do things. So there's a number of efforts, I think, that through Ken's work and others, we're going to continue to kind of grow and snowball and brainstorm and see what that ultimately looks like. But really excited about that event, especially as it supports the water plan launch. I think those were the two big things, and then staff could call upon. So we do have a new staffer. So this was kind of another exciting turn of events, is that when Craig had left our team, with Sam stepping up to kind of take on all the roundtable work, it created some opportunities within our group to shift duties and really re-envision a position. We haven't had, gosh, for many years. I mean, I can think about a couple of meetings maybe 10 years ago where it felt like there was kind of dedicated staff to help, helping PEPO and really organize and take the lead there. And we haven't had that. It's been kind of passed along to various people and never with the primary duty of any one person. So now Elizabeth Scoder on our team is really taking the lead there. She's, kind of a dedicated person now on our team, helping us with a number of efforts, but with a focus on education and outreach. So it's really exciting. I think that's, if something else comes up, tag me. Thank you.
No, thank you. That was great. And we did also, Patrick and I had a phone conference, a Zoom meeting with Jayla Poppleton. We go as well as
Scott Williams.
Yeah, Williams. And yes, Scott Williams. And so we talked about what they have a pretty modest budget. And they have, they're envisioning a tour that they'd like to do in this basin. It's something that we probably want to build onto. It's not going to replicate. I mean, it's not going to take the place of whatever effort that we want to do as part of this Water 22. So whether we want to do, like the Colorado River District, they do a state of the Yampa or state of the White River. Those are opportunities that we have to really take a look at how we might be able to dovetail and combine forces here to be a little more effective. That's still all in the early planning stages, even though there's a pretty condensed timeline on that as well. So we'll probably have a lot more to share with you on at the next roundtable meeting, give you some more details. So be kind of thinking about any ideas that you have about how we might do a better job in our roundtable promoting 2022 and the realization of what drought means to the state of Colorado, not just the people right here in our basin, and how we can relay that message. And that was one of the other things that came up at the state meeting was maybe we don't have a good, clear message. What is the state message on water? What is that? We don't have that yet. We haven't really done that hard work. One of my favorite sayings is, sorry, I sent you a 5-page letter. I didn't have time to write you one thing. So we don't have a good, simple message or a key talking points that we want to emphasize. And a lot of that is not only just the hard work of us talking through that individually or in groups, whether it's in the basin or at the state level, but then testing that message, going out with a marketing firm and saying what actually appeals to people, and then adopt that as part of the water plan. And that's our message. That's what we're going to make sure everybody knows. And maybe one of the things is something about, what does the drought really mean to you? Because it affects everybody in the state. Front Range thinks that the Colorado's on the other side of the divide. It is, but they take a lot of water, over 500,000 acre feet, and they are in the crosshairs with demand management and any type of curtailment. And anybody managing water knows that. So anyway, those are the types of things that we're talking about right now. I don't think I have anything else I want to bring up. Patrick, do you?
No.
That's all I have right now.
One more, sorry.
Please.
Just to add that, and I think this will help inform some of that work, but probably in that October timeframe, October, November, we'll be releasing a public awareness survey. And so we've contracted with BBC Research and Consulting to help us in that effort. They're actually the same group that did the work in 2013. And I think that those kind of questions and Ken and others on PEPA are going to help participate in a little bit of a working session just to kind of review the questions that we have and kind of better understand it. But really aimed at understanding that how have things changed, how have perceptions changed, what are people willing to pay for when it comes to water, and what are people willing to do, what does drought and climate change mean to them, or some of the kind of the flavor of those questions as well.
I could just, because it comes to my mind as far as what that message is. I mean, one of the things that I think is important is, yes, water is critically important for us to drink, but it's also critically important for us to have something to eat.
Yeah.
I mean, somehow make that a message, because that's a piece that people forget. It takes water to produce the food that we eat.
Well, yeah, I don't know whether you do this, but I do these ads in my mind, and sprinklers watering lawn in a median is not agriculture.
Yeah. Thank you.
That is my number one pet peeve. All lawn irrigation is wasted water. That doesn't do anybody any good.
Okay. So, thanks, Ken. So was.
Did you want to do that? What? Sure. action, I guess I'll do that. I don't have any authority on the roundtable, but you know, Kelly Romero Heaney was our PEPO chair. And since she moved on to different pastures, I won't say it's greener, but different pastures, we need a chair as a PEPO. Ken's shown interest of becoming a PEPO chair. So I can't nominate him, but Ken and I have been working together about trying to, you know, have him become PEPO chair. He's asked me questions as PEPO liaison, which I'm still trying to figure out what that means for me as PEPO liaison. But anyway, so we have an action item. We need a chair. You have a volunteer. You guys know what to do parliamentary ways.
I'd like to nominate
This
Ken.
T right, I'll move to nominate.
It's what you get for not showing up.
We have speaker problems here. So it's been moved and nominated several times. Ken, you're the man, I guess.
Thank you. Well,
we need to vote on that, but I'm sure that that's.
It's posted.
Agenda discussion. You got a volunteer.
Everybody in favor of putting Ken in charge of PEPO, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those opposed? Nay? Okay, motion passes.
we'll look to regret it, I'm sure.
What we see up there, you're gonna do a good job. We're glad to have
Thank you
you.
for yours.
So since I still have the floor, hopefully I have a second action item for the roundtable.
Yeah.
We have $6,500 provided by CWCB for PEPO activities. CAA usually gets a PO from CWCB for that $6,500, but they need a budget. So I'm asking for the budget to be approved by the roundtable here. Then, you know, we're real quick about the money. Mostly it's media costs, so that pays for all the meeting notices in the newspapers. So that's still the best way to get a hold of the majority of people are in the 3 counties, is the newspapers. So media costs there, we can cover some conference fees if needed, not very minimal, 300. And then my time to doing all the notes and attending the meetings and for PEPO and supporting Ken and state meetings and stuff is $3,800. So I'm just asking if you, the PEPO committee agreed to that budget earlier in a PEPO meeting, and you can say yes or no to that, but I'm asking for you guys to approve that roundtable, and I can send it off to CWCB, please.
I move to approve your fiscal year 2022 budget as presented.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded to move to approve the PEPO budget. Discussion? Okay, let's move on. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Hearing none, the budget is approved.
I got a PEPO question.
Okay.
Patrick, Ken, could the Lower Yampa get some help educating the public on over appropriated status, what that means?
So I'll let you know that Aaron is working with CAA. We're going to actually use some Walton funds to send out a mailer on that particular subject that the Division of Water Resources has developed. We're editing it right now. So we're going to mail that out to all the residents of Routt County, or at least Moffat County residents, or maybe use the Colorado First District's mailing address, I think is what we're going to try to use. So we're going to get that out. There's going to be a meeting, and I don't know it off the top of my head. I'm trying to convince them not to have it in the Routt County Fairgrounds, but maybe move it to the Moffat County Fairgrounds on that particular subject. So we are working on that.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the Big River Committee, IBC, we got Jeff Meyer and Tom Gray. Tom,
I think Jeff's got a little bit to say.
Jeff, what do you got for us tonight?
So we'll go real quick here. The busy ranch season and the general sluggishness of your co-chair has kept us from having a Big River Committee meeting this month, but we do have 4 real good topics that we're working on for next year's work. And we'll hopefully get some cows bred and get on to a committee meeting in October. Briefly though, Tom and I thought it would make sense to give you some idea of where the state stands on the demand management process. We got an update by email from Amy Ostdike. And in brief, the CWCB staff and board are working on a decision-making roadmap for DM. So they're putting together, the staff has put together a roadmap. I think next week's board meeting that's one of the key topics to try to get that approved. And the roadmap basically asks 3 questions. First, is demand management feasible for Colorado? Second, if it is feasible, is it worthwhile? Does it make sense to do it? And then third, if it's feasible and worthwhile, is it advisable given all of the issues that have been raised in the feedback? The fact that they're working on a decision-making roadmap, a plan to see how they can make the decision, I think tells you just how complex and difficult the topic is going to be for the board to wrestle down. Maybe Jackie has a comment or 2 on that in her comments to follow. The feedback that has been received by and tabulated by the staff is really impressive. If you go to the website and the engagement website and look, it's like 150 pages of feedback, including our demand management principles and the Big River Committee's response to the DM framework. So they have heard us. We're the Yampa-White-Green Basin, along with many others, is in that feedback loop. But I don't have a real good feel for you in terms of any kind of implementation schedule or decision-making timeframe. I think that'll follow from the board meeting next week. So I think that's it. Tom, jump in if you want to add anything to that.
That's good. He's a good job, Jeff.
Thanks for the update, Jeff. We appreciate your time that you spend on this. We know you spend a lot of time on it, so appreciate that. So Big River Committee's finished up. Let's move on to Jackie.
Hi, everybody. Well, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Well, I'm sorry I'm not there in person, but we're having a COVID outbreak at my son's school, so I figured that I would spare you all the possibility of spreading that around. So I knew that you would touch on, Big River would touch on demand management, and so I wanted to, not reiterate what Jeff said, but just let you all know that is coming up on the agenda, and Jeff is correct that we had our last in-person meeting, or our first in-person meeting in July, I guess it was. And that was really useful. It was the first time, obviously, since about 1.5 years worth of meetings that we had gotten to speak together in the same room. Almost all the board members were there in person, and just be able to converse about where we thought we were with demand management in general. And we brought some questions up that I think were well received by staff, and really was the opportunity to sort of reframe the really complex matrix that we designed around all the feedback we got from the different work groups. And I think what it helped me with, and I can't speak for the rest of the board, but was that, there's going to be questions that we can answer now this year. There's going to be questions that we really can't answer until we do some sort of either paper pilot or trial pilot on the ground. And I'm not saying we're going to do a trial on the ground, but that is something that some board members are interested in. And so we're really not going to be able to say for sure, you know, the measurement piece and how much water gets to the state line and what that looks like and how we're able to shepherd past people's head gates. And we're not able to answer a lot of the big river questions that we've all been sort of, you know, we're wondering about. And those include, you know, future development in the upper basin, like the Lake Powell pipeline. And they include interim guideline negotiation work. And they include the other states and the Upper Colorado River Commission's own study on demand management. So those are just some of the flavor of the questions that we kind of categorized into. Yeah, we can talk about this question. We can probably answer these, and that helps us at least record the types of questions we know we have to answer for our water users before we can, you know, say that demand management is the program that we are going to utilize as part of a suite of efforts. So I think that helped organize things for me in my brain, and trust me, I've heard the feedback from all over the state that we're the Colorado Water Conversation Board, which I guess having the conversations is better than the Colorado Rash Decision Making Board. So, you know, we'll take it for now. You know, I look forward to chatting with some of you and hearing your individual thoughts on how this long conversation about demand management is weighing on you and your individual operations or your regional neighbors. So please, you know, reach out to me if you have a few minutes and you want to talk about it. Obviously, experiencing drought and seeing Colorado River issues all over every paper in the West and the East Coast is really, you know, it's never far from your mind. So my number 970-819-2484, please call me if you want to chat about this. Sometimes I know that it's not always fun to give your opinion in a forum like this, and sometimes it's nice to have those one-on-one conversations. So I'm always here for you if you want to talk more about it. Now that said, I will continue to advocate for demand management being something that we talk about in concert with interstate policy and advocating for what's best for Colorado as we walk down this road of unknowns with compact administration and the like. And please know that the board only has so much pull in that world, and then we leave it up to the Colorado River Commission and the Upper Colorado River Commission states. And so I just want to let you know that I hear that. All right, a couple other things. Those of you who weren't able to attend or listen in on the Colorado Water Congress meeting, I wanted to share with you, there was just an excellent presentation on lessons learned from Colorado experiences with interstate compact administration. And in a second here, I'm going to link in the chat to this report that Kelsey, and I forgot her last name, I apologize, I'm not on the top of my head, and Hannah Holm from Colorado Mesa University worked on. And they went, and it was actually like a fairly quick interview. Some of you may remember when Kelsey did some interviews on demand management and presented her findings on how different people across the state felt on demand management. And then she gave that presentation at the summer conference in 2019. So this is the same researcher. She did this report, and she went around and talked to basins that have a compact, which are most of them, Rio Grande, Arkansas, South Platte, and Republican, and got some of their feedback on, you know, how they had the discussions on their basin and what they would, you know, what advice they would give. And I know we're short on time, so I'm gonna just edit my conversation and hope that you will go ahead and take a look at least at the findings of this report. It's pretty short and it's really interesting. And so again, happy to, you know, share my thoughts offline when we get a moment to do that too. So I'm going to put that in the chat for you. So go ahead and utilize that. I think that's it for me for tonight. And I'd love to answer any questions if you have any. Thanks, Ken, for doing the PEPA work. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jackie. Questions? We got many questions, but we're not going to say anything tonight, I guess. What about on?
I don't know. T writes mutes off, so he might have one.
T right?
No? All right. Well,
That means you get a good job.
I don't know.
So,
All right. Sounds
we
good.
appreciate you representing us there. We really do. It means a lot to us that we know that we can send you that way and you come back with a good report. Thanks, Jackie.
Mike, I'll make just one real quick. Jackie, when we got an update from Amy at the Water Congress at the PEPA meeting on demand management, it sounded like they were taking the foot off the accelerator a little bit. Is that the impression that you're getting at the board level, that we're maybe, even though there's a sense of urgency because of the drought, they're not rushing forward for achievability and advisability? What's your sense of that timing?
Yeah. So I think, you know, to get in a little bit of the details, some of you have maybe noticed that we being the Colorado Basin took part in these DROA releases, the Drought Response Operations Agreement releases that were part of the DCP Drought Contingency Plan. And so I think there is an outstanding question about understanding how much water from the reservoirs so that would be from Blue Mesa, Navajo, and Flaming Gorge down into Powell. We definitely as a state want to know how those releases showed up, and, you know, fortunately / unfortunately, they took place right in perfect concert with the monsoon that happened in the Southwest. So we need to be able to pull apart that data and, you know, say, well, we're sending water downstream and how much is getting there. And so that tells us, that's a sign for us as a state to know when we send water across state lines and down to Powell, what does that look like? How much of that water that we release gets there, right? So it's a good sort of test for us to understand that. And the Bureau, as far as my understanding goes, has been, you know, kind of asked to report back on that. And so potentially that's a response that's going to help us with our decision making. You know, the financial aspect of this, the fact that we've had State Engineer Ryan report to us on numerous occasions that, you know, we're not in danger of falling below our 10-year rolling average, is a piece of this that, yes, we're feeling pressure. We're feeling a lot of pressure to declare demand management as a response to the drought. But I hope that, you know, cooler heads are prevailing and that we're still able to make sure that we really believe in what we're doing. And, you know, I make fun of people calling us the conversation board, but A, as you all know, meetings are hard to have virtually. And B, we need to make sure that we're making the right decision for folks. And so I think there is a bit of a slowdown, maybe, Ken, I guess, in response to your question, but I don't think it's a slowdown on staff's part, and I don't think it's a slowdown on the board's part to continue collecting all of the information and considering all the pieces of this so that we can move forward. You know, never waste a good crisis. We know that this sure does look like the new norm. So we're not sitting back and thinking that, you know, this is going to magically disappear. And that was my really long-winded answer to your question that I don't know actually answered your question or not, but there's a couple little pieces to it. So.
Jackie, I think we got a question in the chat, but we can't read it, so maybe you can read it for us.
Yeah, sure. Doug is saying that the CWCB meeting is worth watching. The first hour is a presentation by Brad Udall on the drought and climate change. And he's correct, but it was the CWCB demand management workshop that just took place in August. And so on our YouTube channel, that should be there. And yeah, Brad came and he gave, I think, a bit of a different presentation than we're used to seeing, which really talked a lot about precipitation on impacts on, you know, soil moisture, like we're hearing a lot of, like Upper Yampa's working on this soil moisture work. But I think it did give a bit of a different spin to things. So if you do have a little bit of time, I agree with Doug that it was an interesting presentation. I think if I have the slides, I'll send them to Megan. I can't remember if they got sent out, but those are another way that you can take a look at the information that was presented without watching YouTube.
Any other questions for Jackie? Jackie, thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Be good to see you in person.
Look forward to it.
Hey, all, this is Andy Rossi. I just have one comment question there to follow up on Jackie's comments. And I think one of the important things that Jackie just touched on is the opinion by our state engineer, Kevin Ryan, on his perception of a relative risk of a compact call. And I don't think we should ignore Kevin's opinions on this matter. And every chance you get to listen to him about that and to press him on why he has that opinion is definitely important. So please, reach out to Kevin and ask him why he's got that opinion, because I think it's important information for all of us to hear.
Good point, Andy. Good point. Okay, so moving on, let's see, Aaron, you're up. How are you tonight?
All right. Thank you. So I'll talk tonight first about the Yampa River. As many of you know, I'll start out by saying there has been 2 situations on the Yampa River this summer where the downstream water user at Lily Park was short of water and requested a call. One of those I did honor, as many of you know, because you probably received my emails, and as suspected, it was short-lived. I knew there was a rain event coming, and it was likely the call was gonna come off. The second request for a call I did not honor. Part of the reason was there was already some pilot water. The River District project pilot water was in the river on its way down there, in addition to the fact that I knew that again there was another rain event coming. So the second time I did not honor that call. To give you some dates, we did have releases for the recovery program start on July 17th. Those ran through August 5th. And then they were shut off on August 5th due to, again, a rain event. Then those releases resumed on August 12th and are still now in place today. We have recovery program water in the river at the tune of 50 CFS is what's being released from Elkhead Creek Reservoir for the recovery program. As far as the pilot project water from the river district, as you know, that's a 1,500 acre foot pool designed essentially to keep the call off. The call came on actually in July, and that water was not in the river, I think mostly because no one expected the call to come on that early. But again, I think maybe I haven't mentioned that pilot project water was started the release on August 12th. That again helped keep the call off the second time. And then on September 3rd, the project water, the release was stopped. There's no pilot project water in the river right now. In total, they've released about 1,200 acre feet. They have just a little over 300 acre feet left. We're watching the river obviously very closely and trying to work on timing as the river starts to decline after the rainstorm we had last week. And that's probably been our biggest challenge, is really watching how the rain events recede and come down once those events have occurred. And they actually have, we've seen that the river actually sustains itself pretty well after a rain event. And this isn't the first year I've seen that happen. So right now there's no pilot project water in the river. We're watching the river closely. And when we really start to see the river start to drop again, I'll be working with Hunter and Don Meyer with the River District to start those releases back up again. So with that said, when we talk about timing, I just want to remind people that it takes 5 days for water to get from Elkhead Creek Reservoir down to Lily Park pumps. And so it's really critical to watch that timing. It's not easy to do. I can say it's important that we watch it, but not easy to really start to make all the time, look at all the timing of that. So that's what's going on with Elkhead Creek. I guess one more thing to take note of on Elkhead Creek, as many of you know, there is the 677 acre feet for the agricultural augmentation pool where the CWCB is involved with that. I'll call it the agricultural pool. That has all been contracted out, as Hunter informed a group today with our Yampa coordination call. All that water has been contracted out. Some of it is being released from Elkhead right now and being taken at the Smith Ditch on Elkhead Creek. The only times that water would be released without a call is for those water users on Elkhead Creek. Otherwise, there would need to be a call on the river for that water to be released. I will say too that in addition, even though the Smith Ditch is currently taking about 8 CFS, or 8 CFS is being released for Smith Ditch on Elkhead Creek, the Norville Ditch has also contracted for water. So we may see additional releases from Elkhead without even a call on to serve those contractees, both the Norville and Smith Ditch. Just moving over real quick to the White River, just to give an update there. There has been a release from Lake Avery. And unfortunately, I didn't look. I don't recall what day when that release was made. I want to say it was around the 12th or 13th. And if David Graff is on the phone, he can correct me. The unfortunate thing with that release is that release was only in the tune of 10 CFS, and it was being released into the White River that had over 200 CFS. And at that time, though, the river was dropping really considerably. There was still just a big enough difference between the 10 CFS and 200 CFS for us to actually see it really make it through the system. So we've definitely worked with our hydrographers to better understand our gauging stations. And if you look at our gauging station right below Big Beaver Creek, where it comes in, there's a lot of noise, if you will, in the hydrograph. So we've worked with our hydrographers on that gauging station. We've been in touch with David Graff, and I think honestly to be able to really see a release from Lake Avery, we would need to release more water than just 10 CFS. Of course we did try to protect that water as we do with any release. Last, I'll just mention again, if anybody didn't get to see the August 19th measurement rule kind of primer that Kevin Ryan put on, I suggest you watch that, or I think it'd be a great thing for you to watch. That is available on our YouTube. Kevin Ryan and a group of us is in the process of scheduling stakeholder meetings. So that is on the forefront here coming soon, as are all the measurement rules. real meetings, the stakeholder meetings. Right now, we will be having one in North Park and a few in the Yampa River Basin and also a couple in the White River Basin. Last, Patrick Stanko did mention a public meeting about over appropriation. And we are holding a public meeting to discuss and educate people on over appropriation. That's on October 25th. Patrick is correct. Right now, we have chosen Hayden for that location. I do think it's important to recognize that a very good chunk of Routt County is involved here. Not all of Routt County is considered over appropriated. And that's one reason I did choose Hayden. I wanted to make sure that we incorporated and include Routt County in these discussions. And the other reason I am hoping we can keep it in Routt County in Hayden is we do have a full day long meeting that same day in Steamboat Springs. So getting to Craig would make it a little bit challenging. And then last, like Patrick said, the Community Ag Alliance is helping put together a flyer. We've provided them some information and they've designed that flyer, and we'll be mailing that flyer out. And then I believe we're also going to provide it via email to those people that we have email addresses for. So that's, I think I've said a lot, and I know we're short on time. So I will go ahead and hand it back to you, Mike.
Thanks, Aaron. You actually had a minute left if you want to take that up.
I have a question.
We have questions, so never mind.
I had a question.
We got several questions.
Go ahead. Hey, Aaron, this is Jeff Comstock. Can you talk a little bit more? I know you know the work that Great Northern's doing on augmentation stuff, and I know you know the public hearing processes you have coming up. What we're still wondering is if you and Kevin have talked about a time frame on when you would find the need to over appropriate the river.
Yeah, Jeff, that's a great question, because actually just yesterday I sent Kevin an email to just kind of start that discussion back up and prompt the discussion like that. And that's where we are. Honestly, I haven't heard back from Kevin, but I reached out to him and asked him to start considering when we can, when he might want to make that decision, and then know that when he makes the decision, say if he makes the decision to designate it over appropriate, that he's going to set a date when that actually, the over appropriation occurs at some further date out. So, Jeff, like I said, I've pinged Kevin on that topic, and hopefully we can have a conversation fairly soon.
And don't forget in your pings that we have a 2-year request on your books.
Okay.
We had another one over here.
Aaron, thanks for your report. Is there any intention or ability for you to videotape your presentation in Hayden so that it could be forwarded out to a much larger audience that may not be available on that particular date? Or have you ever considered doing a short over appropriation video production that we could circulate here in Northwest Colorado to help folks better understand all the implications of the over appropriation designation?
Yeah, great question, Ken. Well, first I will say that March 18th presentation that I gave is available, and I think it's March 18th anyway. It is available through our YouTube, our website, YouTube. And then I know that Sonia Macy's, who is working for me, those who remember Jim Martin, Sonia Macy's replaced Jim Martin. She's actually the one that's been working with Community Ag Alliance, and Community Ag Alliance will be working on recording that meeting. In addition to the fact that I would like to make it a hybrid meeting if possible. So hopefully we can reach a bunch of folks and be able to tape that. So it's in the works, Ken.
Great, thank you.
Okay, looks like we've got a chat from David Graff on the Lake Avery thing, Aaron. We're dropping about 12 CFS temps in the river are improving for the fish, but kudos to Aaron, sorry. Can't see that far. Anyways, blah, 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 blah.
Well,
Getting turned back on.
Yeah, and I do appreciate the correction there. David is correct. It's more like 12 CFS that's being released from the river there. So, yeah.
Okay. I don't see any other questions online. I think we're done here.
Now we're 2 minutes over.
Now we're over. So let's move on. Thank you, Aaron. We appreciate your time.
You bet. Thank you.
Callie.
Jeff's giving me a hard time over here just. Can you guys hear me from that are online if I speak from here?
You're right, you can.
Okay. Well, the
Yes.
camera doesn't listen. It's been way too long tonight, sorry. And I will be very quick here. So with our White River Integrated Water Initiative, our 2 contractors are moving things along very well. So we call our advisory group a PAC, the Planning Advisory Committee. They have met 4 times this year and will meet again in September and November. And definitely making progress. They have a couple of speakers coming in for each one of these next 2 presentations. We have had another 4 outreach meetings. So 1 in each kind of little community within Rio Blanco County. We had a total of about 70 people attend those. We're in the process of having our reach or segment meetings now. And so we're asking people that live in each one of those sections of the river to come and be a part of and participate in what the objectives, or develop the objectives that would help us meet the overall goals for the whole watershed. We will have probably 4 of those right now, 1 for each reach. And then we're going to wait for our diversion and riparian assessments before we have the next, before we have their final meeting. Then we have, I believe they have totally completed the diversion assessments at this point. And so that would be 20 of those we have completed, as well as we are about to embark on 20 riparian health assessments as well. So hoping to get those all done this fall. I'm not sure that we will, but we're going to give it our best shot to do that. So I think that is it for the initiative. I just did want, because we were just talking about the measurement rules and so forth. The district is working with Kevin to determine a date for that and to help get the information out on that for the White River. So I think that has all that I got. Is there questions?
Yeah. Do we have questions in the room? We're good to hear. Anybody online have a question for Callie? Looks like you got it covered, Callie. So I think that's everything for tonight except for announcements. So the Yampa-White-Green BIP.
Did you, Mike, I apologize. So you had on the agenda that we were supposed to talk, update on the IWMP. That information was included in the agenda packet. I also saw that there was a action item, but we'll have to table that. This is Doug again. So we'll have to table that because we didn't put anything in there for an action item. I think the action item was and Brian Hodge, maybe you can help me here, but I thought that action item was just a contract extension of a contract that we have with one of our contractors, and that we were going to extend and increase that contract, but we don't have any information in our packet for tonight, so we need to defer that.
So we can defer that to the November meeting and get by then, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a comment on that, Brian?
I don't have anything to add to that. No, I don't have any more info than you do, Doug.
So yeah, we'll be all right for now, and we're within our grant amount. And so really it's just the actual roundtable approving the grant. So we'll be all right. We'll keep moving on.
Okay. So I guess I have to get with Megan and make sure we get that on the agenda for November. So what I was saying was the Yampa-White-Green Basin implementation plan update is ready to be reviewed. I think you guys have all got the email. If not, we might speak to Megan, but our comment period on this is from August 10th to September 15th. Is that right? Yep. So short time to comment on that. So look it over and comment. Next meeting is November 10th. We have at-large elections and the Basin Roundtable officer appointments. So everybody needs to keep that in mind. It's a good time to get rid of me, so keep that in mind.
Or double up Nikki chair.
Is Alden done the chair?
I think so. I think he was really good, but I think we need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Second.
And move to second to adjourn. All
Done deal.
Thanks, Patrick. Nay.
So you're adjourning.
Yeah.